Y'all folks ready? Yeah. Good doing there? Y'all.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, there you go. I'd like to call the Board of Supervisors meeting to order. As always, let's start with the Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thank you. We do have a quorum. We do need to adopt an agenda. Anybody have anything we need to add to the agenda this evening?
No, sir, Mr. Chairman.
Anybody? What's the pleasure of the board?
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve the agenda as presented.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. Further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. As always, let's start with public comment. Public comment. Yes, sir.
I'm Joe May from Edlin. Earlier, I passed out a sheet, statistics compiled by the Commonwealth of Virginia on our SOL scores in this county. They're dismal. Doesn't matter whether you're black or white. They're dismal. And I think it's time the county, these pay raises, teacher bonuses, it's got to stop until something gets done. And yeah, you can't tell the school board what to do, but you've got the power of the purse. You know it. It's time to be exercised. That was it.
Thank you. Other public comment. Yes, sir.
I'm Mike Sharman from the Novum area of Madison. What I handed out has nothing to do with my first comment, which tags on to Mr. May's comments about the SOLs. If you recall, those SOLs would have come out during the last school board administration. So I think you're probably going to be seeing something different now. But I just wanted to mention, you're going to be hitting some of the tax issues this evening. So I wanted to just speak to probably what is in the heart of each of you, which is that concept that the power to tax is the power to destroy. And you all know that, and you try to deal with it. But what I want you to think of too is the taxation essentially makes each one of us an indentured servant. You know, as you look through how you tax, one of the things that's taxed is private property of businesses, private property of citizens. Well, we truly don't have private property if you own a piece of it, and if we can't own it without paying tax on it. I bought a car with my after-tax dollars, but I don't get to keep it free and clear if I don't pay you the tax on it. I bought my farm with my after-tax dollars, but I don't really own it unless I continue to pay you taxation to it. The handout is just a reminder of problems with tax reform. This is about Jim Gilmore's no car tax, which really meant no car tax right now, kind of. And probably the most important part of it isn't the recitation of its history, but kind of the admonition in the middle part of the second page, where it's talking about the ad valorem tax on automobiles, any other value-based tax on property really is not a good tax policy. And then toward the end, where it says, what lessons can we draw from the no car tax not having worked out terribly well? And that's whatever tax reform you all are trying to do, which I would absolutely commend, it's hard. And you want to be really looking down the road. And I was in a room with Mr. Gilmore and a number of his policymakers when they were talking about the no car tax premise during the campaign. And myself and one other person mentioned, this is a shell game. You're not really looking forward to what's going to happen in 3 to 5 years. And they said, no, but it'll get us elected, just shut up. And so anyway, I didn't shut up. But what I would want y'all to do is think of not just 1 year, not just 2 years, not just 3, but one basic premise of, do my children get to own free and clear what I would pass on? Do I get to, when I'm in retirement? On and on and on. Just what is the long-term impact of what you're doing while you're thinking about the power to tax, the power to destroy, and your taxation essentially makes me an indentured servant to the county. So I appreciate it. If y'all have any questions, I'll be glad to answer them.
Thank you, Mr. Armour. Other public comment. Livingston, do we have a whole slew of people on there? Yeah, that's got to be a record. All right, moving on. We'll do public comment again at the end. Consent agenda. We have minutes from 7/12/2022. What's the pleasure of the board?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. Further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right, special appearance. Mr. McGrath, come up and talk to us. Welcome.
All right, I appreciate the time this evening to talk about Rappahannock Rapidan Community Services. This is my annual kind of year in review for us. I promise there's a lot of slides that will be very short. I believe you should also have, I did it a little different this year. I was thinking of Clay and I kind of gave you a cheat sheet so I'd be quick for
Thank you.
y'all. So
Thank you.
if you have any questions, again, Jonathan, want to go through these?
Mr. McGrath, you prefer the slide or do you want the summary, the
No,
note?
the slide is great.
Okay.
Yep.
All right.
I'll just hit on the key points, and like I said, you have a long summary of all the stuff that has happened, so we
Okay.
can put through. And again, I just want to always keep in mind that for this fiscal year 22, I think the most striking thing to me to remember is that we actually planned. It seems time is kind of in a weird state right now. This year, when we did last year's budget, that makes sense. Last year we did, strike that, reverse it, right? Delta variant, we didn't even know what it was. So if we think about, we've been living with the Delta variant for well over a year now, how different the world was. Our staff were coming out of a year of the coronavirus. They were already exhausted, and I think you'll see what they accomplished in another year during the pandemic is pretty exceptional. And I just want to publicly acknowledge the staff of our organization. So just some of the challenges, the pandemic continued. Because of the Delta variant, we had to continue to close some of our congregate sites. The fees for our organization due to those closures was about $1.5 million less than we had projected. Additionally, we saw the stress in our community, behavioral health challenges. Our planning district saw 59 fatal overdoses last year. That is a 34% increase, and that reverses the trend we've seen over the last 3 years of a decrease in fatal overdoses. For our organization, we saw calls for emergency custody orders rise by 36%. On top of, again, the increase in the behavioral health challenges, staffing shortages, both at the state and local level, really did hamper our ability. We are continuing with the closure of the state hospital beds. About half of the state hospital beds that were originally closed have been reopened. However, we are not seeing, with the reopening of half of those beds, individuals from our community who need to be hospitalized at the state level still are not able to get into the state hospital system. And the problem that we are experiencing is because of the lack of community options for people, the individuals who are in the state hospitals have nowhere to go. And so what we have seen now is what used to be kind of a rotation at the top half of those individuals who would come in and out. We get people in because of the closures, the increasing symptoms that people are experiencing, and the closing of a lot of community options. Everybody who is in the state hospitals is there for a very long time. So there's absolutely no movement, even though you might hear, oh, we've reopened half the beds. It is having no effect at all at the local level. And again, it is just putting tremendous stress on law enforcement, our community responders, emergency departments. There's not a weekend goes by that I don't get a call from a sheriff or a chief of police or a hospital president saying, we have 1, 2, 3 people in our emergency departments. What are we going to do? We saw a skyrocketing gas prices this year. I do want to thank our board for approving a stipend for our staff during this time. And our staff, we just continue to see lots of staff compassion. So they're very challenging here. There has been a lot of changes within our organization, and I actually have a person joining me today, Ms. Cheryl Reinstrom, who came on board this year as a new associate executive director. And while we've had a lot of new agency faces at the leadership level, most of those faces are known to us, people within our organization. So we really are happy about that. We have also seen with the new governor a change in the Department of Behavioral Health, and I apologize for using initials. I try to catch myself, so I apologize for that. And again, whenever we change leadership in Richmond, it creates confusion and uncertainty throughout our system, and we are experiencing that right now. However, one item that I do think the board should be aware of, and something I preach, I think, every time I come here, is the Department of Behavioral Health's position of regionalizing efforts and services. And by regionalizing at the Department of Behavioral Health level, they are talking about health planning region 1. Where I would consider regional my 5 counties that I'm responsible for the Department of Behavioral Health, that is health planning region 1. That's Winchester, out past Lynchburg, Charlottesville, Fredericksburg, Stanton, all the way up to the West Virginia. There is not an effective way to manage services across that wide geographic area. And I continue to express my significant concerns for the commissioner for everyone's behalf here. In spite of all the challenges and the changes, it has been an astronomical year of growth for our organization. We opened the C Recovery Center in August of last year. And the C Recovery stands for Support, Empower, and Encourage. And really what the C Center is, it's a barrier-free entry to our services. We know people do not seek treatment and support because of the stigma. The C Recovery is predominantly peer-run with licensed clinicians providing background support to those peers. You walk through the front door, there's an iPad at the front door. It says, is it your first visit, yes or no? And which one of the 5 counties are you from? And you complete those 2 questions, and the staff at the desk will say, congratulations, you are now eligible for every service that we are able to provide here. Since opening in August of last year, we've had 10,000 visitors to the C Recovery Center. It is astronomically effective. What else of those 10,000 visits, 2,000 unique individuals have come through the doors at that location. So again, there is nothing like it in Virginia.
Where is it located?
It is located right near the National Cemetery. I'm happy. I think, Dustin, you've been there. I'm sorry. Supervisor Dawson has been there. But I would be happy. It's a pretty incredible place. And what else is so unique about the location? When individuals started coming to this, we started tracking, are you involved in any type of formal treatment program? And initially, the individuals our peers were connected to, it was about 40, a hair over 40% of those individuals were actually in treatment. In the year since now, those individuals who are coming into this location, we have over 80% of those individuals are in active treatment programs. Additionally, because of the nature of the program, the funding and flexibility we have in the service, when we heard about the 59 fatal overdoses in our community, within 2 or 3 weeks, we were able to provide harm reduction kits, including fentanyl test strips. Most of those overdoses in our community are fentanyl related. People can walk in, no questions asked. We can give them a little kit, it has fentanyl test strips, but it also has information and cards. And we know that if people keep coming back for those test strips, eventually we can get those people into treatment. And the goal is, keep people alive until we can get them treatment. So And we started a bunch of other, specific programs throughout the course of the year. We started a parent child interactive therapy program, a healthy ideas program, which is a program that actually is an outreach program for our community senior citizens, so that we assess our community seniors, because we know isolation and depression have really hit that community really hard. And again, a bunch of other programs that you have lots of information on. We also, as an organization this year, have stepped kind of headlong into housing. We know housing and safe, stable housing is critical if people are going to recover from their substance abuse or mental health issues. And created a partnership this year called the Parkside Management Corporation, where we submitted a low-income tax credit proposal with another community organization. We did receive approval for that, and we'll be building a 37-unit low-income tax credit supported housing project in downtown Culpeper. We will also be submitting in the early spring another proposal for another low-income tax credit program in the town of Orange, right in the middle of downtown. That will be approximately a 20-unit project that we're working on. We've seen a lot of expansion on some of our housing programs and those types of things, but really our community struggles with affordable low-income housing. We are also in the process of renovation of a building we own on the grounds of Fauquier Hospital, which will be a long-term residential treatment program for women who are in recovery from a substance use disorder. Again, something that's not in our community. Obviously, as this board knows, we are looking to expand our office and services in Madison County. And we're getting pretty close to having the goal of service locations in all 5 counties. Delayed for a couple of years, but we're getting there pretty close. So from an organization, again, we can't do anything without the support of our local boards of supervisors. And again, our county governments, I can't thank you enough for the support you give us as an organization. You got lots of that information on broken funds. So my infamous charts that everyone hates that I will not read, but our service delivery charts, you can just kind of scroll through them. You have 2 numbers. For our service area, Madison County is 7.8% of my population base. So the first number would be the number of unique Madison County individuals who are served by that versus the total number that is served by us as an organization. I would caution people, because one of the things that I always do then is multiply the numbers out to see if each county is getting, quote, their fair share. Then it doesn't work that way, unfortunately. And the fact of the numbers is, I would be the first to say we need to increase those numbers, because those numbers are how many. They don't, not a reflection of actual community. And those are all helpful. You'll see all those. And so with all that as a background, we got our budget for this year. And again, just our goals. Again, nothing happens right now in this environment without adequate staffing. So our goal with our budget for this year was to maximize staff compensation. And also when we did that, to ensure salaries are sustainable, that I'm not coming back to you for more money for stuff that I should not have done in the first place. We did target the highest staff vacancy positions, and then continuing alignment with some organizational stuff. Our employee health care is too expensive. We have held employee health care flat now for the last 3 years, and we're continuing to make that. A huge investment this year in technology. More and more as we are opening more and more satellite locations and decentralizing our services, we really need to have the technology in the hands of our staff. So we did also put a lot of money into technology this time. Okay. With that said, our budget runs just short of $35 million this year. It's about a $3.2 million increase, or about 10% from the previous year. I will note that in the last 4 years, our organization has grown 32%. And almost all of that has been in the last 2 years. If you are so interested where all of our money comes from, you can see all that. Much more, I think I'd like to show this, and it's just the pie chart where our different revenue sources come from. What I am most pleased with is most of our pie pieces are pretty equal, and so we are not really that subject. If federal funds tighten up, our other funds are able to carry us as an organization. I know a lot of organizations like ours are so dependent on one slice of this pie, and the fact that we have, I think, some good balance in this chart is really the critical number. And where our money goes to our staff. As you can see that. This year as well, we do as an organization over the last couple of years have been able to accumulate some cash reserves. And so this year, the board has approved the spending of some of our cash reserves as an organization on some significant capital projects. Boxwood, which is our residential treatment program, we're doing a small interior renovation so that just so we are better able to handle people coming into the program during quarantine periods because of the pandemic, because it is a congregate shared living experience. Bridges, which is our day program for adults with intellectual disabilities, we're doing some renovations to that, actually converting that to administrative office space. We put some budget money away for a prospective renovation of Madison project, and some of the other stuff. And just save the date. This is the 50th anniversary of our organization. I'm hopeful, and you will all get individual invitations, but Thursday night, September 29th, will be a celebration of this organization. It is free, it is open to the public, and really want to showcase everything that this organization has done for our community over the last 50 years, and a lot more information. But there's food, free, fun, all that stuff. So I appreciate the time. Thank you very much. Any questions, I'm happy to answer.
You've become very efficient, Jim. Who has questions for Mr. McGrath?
I got a couple, Mr. LaGraff. So when you were talking about the state of the state hospital beds,
Yeah.
You mentioned something about, well, some community options were lost.
Yeah.
What's an example of that? I don't think I know what that means.
So, for example, both Charlottesville and Fredericksburg have what's called crisis stabilization units, which are run by their CSBs. My CSB, your CSB, asked to build one of those in our area, and we were denied. But what those are is they are a alternative to a state hospital placement for somebody who's in crisis. They are short-term, 3, 4, 5 day, come get out of your environment, maybe see a doctor, maybe some medication changes, some of those types of things. But during the pandemic, either because of staffing losses or because a lot of these places are congregate reduced capacity, the options for diversion from state hospitals like those CSUs went away.
Okay. Yeah, I was mainly focused, wondering if Madison, one of their options was part of that, but that's not. So yeah, as a follow-up to that, case management.
Mm-hmm.
Does your organization do any case management?
We do a ton of cases.
Do you? And
By code of Virginia, we are the gatekeeper case management for people with mental health issues and intellectual developmental disabilities. So we provide almost all of that.
and how long will you follow somebody until you're satisfied that they are on a good path? Or
So it would depend. So
yeah,
you know,
okay.
by definition, an intellectual and developmental disability is a lifelong event. So we would provide case management for those individuals probably for their entire life. For somebody who is in recovery from a substance use disorder, as long as, you know, there will become a point where the treatment team will make a determination that this person is far enough into their recovery, they don't need case management, we always be available for them. Someone with a mental illness, it could be, if it's someone with a significant and serious mental illness, it could be very long-term as well.
So your files keep growing. They would hardly ever shrink.
Our files never, well, our physical files are shrinking because
Yeah.
everything is now electronic.
Yeah, sure.
But,
I mean,
you know,
well, I'm talking about.
the amount of information and stuff is continually growing.
And one more question. So the Boxwood, are you talking about the old Boxwood restaurant that's
So,
that facility is?
well, technically, yes, but no. The Boxwood is a residential treatment program. Originally, it was at that location. It has since moved to a location just outside the town of Culpeper. It is I always get the number wrong. It's a 24-bed residential treatment program. It also has a medically managed detox program at that site. So people who need a detox, who are not, we can't handle the highest risk individuals, but if medically appropriate, we can do detox. Now, during the pandemic, because of the structure of the program, the detox beds are actually isolated. We have used those beds to bring people into the program, go through quarantine and testing before they go into the general population. So we've closed our detox program.
Mhm.
Where I mentioned we're doing a little bit of renovation, what we're doing is creating a couple isolation beds. We take people from all over the state. Lots of people come from jails and those types of things. And when you're in the general population, those are shared multi-bed living arrangements. So we have to make sure that people are infection-free before they join the general population. So the small renovation we are doing will allow us to bring people in, reopen the detox program up, but able to keep people isolated before they join the general population.
All right, thank you. I just retained the Boxwood name from
We just retained
the old
Boxwood
days.
name.
Yeah,
Yep.
that's all I got, Mr. Chairman.
You talk about like the ECOs, and then I would throw in the overdoses a little bit. Are you seeing trends stay steady, or are you seeing them kind of decrease as far as us getting away from this COVID reality
No.
stuff?
So far this year, our ECOs, emergency custody orders, are up 36%. Where the downside, of course, is after the evaluation, if assessed and approved by a magistrate, then an ECO becomes a TDO. And the TDO is the person who would go to the state hospital. The reality of it is those individuals are not going to the state hospital. They're either getting stuck in the emergency department for up to 72 hours, at which point they're being released. So we are not seeing a downward trend at all in the ECO wards. Now, we have started in Madison, believe we do it 3 days a week. We have a co-responder who is going out on behavioral health calls. And this is a program that we have some private foundation support. And so we have a pretty robust program in the town of Culpeper where we have 2 full-time staff. We see in those environments where our staff go out with law enforcement, if the situation is safe, our staff actually takes leave from law enforcement. And actually, last week I did a ride along and observed how this worked. And the ability for our staff then to connect, because we know a huge number of law enforcement calls are safety welfare check types calls, right, or those types of things. But the clinicians that go out are able to de-escalate the situation. But most importantly, on their next shift, they're able to make referrals out or have caseworkers go out. And we do see in those types of environments a reduction in calls. And honestly, I hope it's a trend. We're doing everything we can to increase that capacity for our five-town area.
Any other questions for Jim or comments?
I have one, Jim. Back on your funding chart, you had about $6 million coming from other sources.
Yes.
What are some of those sources?
Medicaid transportation reimbursements for our vans, grants. We have a variety of different grants, philanthropic grants. those types of things, individual fees. Our services aren't free. So if they're not Medicaid fees, there might be fees from other individuals. It's the amalgamation of everything that's not a Medicaid fee or a local grant.
Gotcha.
Anything else for Jim? Jim, thank you very, very much.
Thank you. I appreciate
Appreciate
everything.
Thank you.
All right. Yeah. You got a tough job, Jim. All right. Now we have a public hearing. We've got disposition of Thrift Road property. I feel like we've done this a couple times. Mr. Weekly, Mr. Gregg, who would like to start on this? Please.
Correct. This is in fact the second public hearing on this. This is a result of some issues raised by the title company representing the purchaser of the building. And what we have done is we have specified in the resolution, in the ordinance rather, that they have requested some specific language. What I would ask is that we open the public hearing, we hear from the public. It would be helpful, again, to satisfy the title company if we actually take a roll call vote after this, pass the ordinance and send it. This is one piece of what remains with regard to clearing the title issues. The second issue is we need to get a resolution from the Madison County American Legion Post to take care of some right-of-way issues and also to, again, satisfy the terms of the title company. The sale price remains $250,000. Everything is identical to what it was previously. The purchaser is a name familiar to Madison County, the Rappahannock Community Services Board, who just gave a presentation. I have nothing to add beyond that.
Mr. Weekly, anything to add?
Only, Mr. Chairman, there's an ordinance after your public hearing, should the board want to consider.
2022-3. Any questions for anyone from the board?
I got one, I guess, for Sean. So the American Legion, that'll be a subsequent ordinance that we'll need to.
That will not be a public hearing for this board. It will not be an ordinance for this board. It will be a matter that the American Legion Post's leadership needs to take up.
Okay, thank you.
And we're in communication with them.
We are. Colt Purrier is representing the Legion. They've been very cooperative.
All right. Open the public hearing on the disposition of this property to the RRCSB for $250,000. Is there any public comment? Any public comment? Nothing on there? Any public comment? All right, public hearing is closed. Back to the board.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve ordinance 2022-3 as presented.
Second.
Motion's made and second. Further discussion? I know everybody knows what this is, but we've been asking Mr. Graff for years now, several years, 4 years, there you go, to bring services to Madison County. And this is something that really should benefit a lot of people that are at their greatest time of need. I always think, and I've been telling everybody, I think my favorite line you ever said is when you took over, people were saying, oh, Madison County is way out there. You came and you're like, only 15 minutes up the road. This is not hard. I'll come anytime. And we appreciate that a whole lot, Jim. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, or let's do this differently. Hearing no further discussion, let's do a roll call vote. Ms. Hoffman?
Aye.
Mr. Dawson?
Aye.
Mr. Jewett?
Aye.
Mr. Yao?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Not back in open session. We passed 2022-3. Does that work for them?
It should.
Let's hope.
Thank you.
All right. The next public hearing, amending Chapter 24, Article 6 and 7. Mr. Weekly?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. You may remember, I think it was late June, there was discussions at the staff level between Treasurer's Office and Commissioner of Revenue, along with Mr. Gregg and myself, about the desire to align our remittance dates between the transient oxygen tax and the food and beverage tax, which is also people call meals tax. Currently, the remittance date for TOT is by the 15th of each month, and the remittance date for the meals tax is by the 20th of each month. So what we would like to do, again, is described as to align those so it's easier to administer. It's easier for folks to remit because they're on the same day. We have prepared after for your consideration in the packet ordinance number 2022-4, which thanks to Mr. Gregg that put draft language amending Articles 6 and 7 as described. So I'm happy to answer any questions you may have or before or after you open the public hearing, sir.
Any questions from Mr. Weekly or Mr. Gregg? All right, let's open the public hearing on the passing of ordinance 2022-4, the alignment of the TOT and the meals tax. Any public comment? Any public comment? And still nothing, huh? It's a real bummer. All right, back to the board. What's the pleasure of the board?
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve ordinance 2022-4.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. Further discussion?
Mr. Chairman, point of
Please.
privilege.
Yes, sir.
Just a minor, we will make the adjustment on the second page. We just need to omit the 15th and leave in the 20th.
Yes,
An
sir.
error that I did not catch prior. So doesn't change your action. I just want to make sure you're aware of what you're voting on.
Thank you, Mr. Weekly.
Yeah.
Any further discussion on this item? Hearing none. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Ordinance 2022-4 passes. Thank you, gentlemen. We have no old business. New business. Let's do 2022-11 RSA withdrawal and transition agreement, plus the Greene County withdrawal approval. Mr. Gregg, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to avoid any confusion, because we're going to see another resolution in several weeks with regard to Rapid Service Authority, what we are doing tonight pertains to the actual agreement that was negotiated by the chairman of the three respective boards of supervisors. It has been passed, as I understand it, by Rapid Service Authority. The hope is that it is going to be passed by Madison County tonight. It is going to ratify the terms and conditions of what has been set forth in that agreement, and what I'm going to call the settlement agreement. It is the terms that had been agreed. There's no variance in terms of what was agreed and where we are now with it. Where it is different from what you will be considering in several weeks has to do with the voting structure of the reconfigured Rapid Service Authority. So what we are asking for tonight is the ratification of this so that the continued withdrawal efforts of Greene County from Rapid Service Authority can proceed.
Questions from Mr. Gregg or Mr. Weekly on this? I'm tired of talking about RSA. Not gonna lie. The sooner we can move through this, the better we are. What's the pleasure of the board?
I guess I should say it gives me great pleasure, sir, I move that we approve resolution number 2022-11.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right, personal property tax. Mr. Weekly?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. You may recall during our budget cycle, I believe as Commissioner of Revenue brought to our attention that the rise in appreciation or valuation of personal property has just climbed. I think at one time it was at 30 to 34%, mainly new, but anything primarily 2016 and newer. At that time, there was still more information to come in. Mr. Daniel and his team are going through a software conversion known as Avinity. It's part of your ERP program. So the timing wasn't best to consider bringing a recommendation to the board for maybe a personal property tax rate adjustment. Since that time recently, Mr. Daniel and Ms. Murray and Mr. Fry and ourselves met. We looked at a lot of the information you have here tonight, and you've had emailed as well, to consider, okay, where are we at? What happens if we do nothing? And what are some options? From there, I had encouraged board members, and I believe you've met one-on-one with Mr. Daniel by now, to absorb this and maybe add value to your conversations here tonight. Ultimately, it's my belief that I would recommend some type of an adjustment, but certainly respect whatever the board decides. Also, just to be as clear as possible, not only for the board, but for the general public, part of the discussion and/or review is the vehicle license fee. And your budget revenue sheets, it can also be found as motor vehicle license under the revenue portion. So I imagine there will be plenty of discussion tonight whether to consider that as an option or not. Mr. Daniel has put forth a spreadsheet that if you want to see a change of rates, Alan has that teed up. It's just a minor plugging in a number. But with that being said, the Commissioner of Revenue is the closest to this program and administers this part of the code. So I'd be happy to hand it over to Mr. Daniel to explain the information and field questions the board may have.
Mish, please.
I'll try to keep it pretty brief. I've met with most of you on an individual basis to kind of review the numbers at an upper level. But no, again, we entered the year knowing that the assessments would be up. We were fortunate to do once a year billing, so we had time to make a move. Now I'm much more comfortable with my numbers, with the conversion, et cetera. I'm presenting to you guys some numbers. Certainly happy to look at other scenarios that you guys may have. I've shared what some of the surrounding localities have done as far as reductions or that sort. Again, I kind of just threw on the table the proposal of a $3.20 tax rate and removing the vehicle license fee. Kind of there in the green, we had talked about the effective tax rate on a vehicle changes as you charge that $30 fee as the value goes down. Traditionally, since colonial times, taxes have been ad valorem based on the value. I don't know if is that the fair and equitable way. Traditionally, Virginia has done it that way. Again, it kind of shows you as the vehicle value goes down, the effective tax rate with the vehicle license fee goes up. However, I don't want to steal Mr. Jewett's thunder. He kind of talked me through another scenario today that may be more fair. And do you wish to share your thoughts there, Mr. Jewett, or?
Do you have the spreadsheet with the that scenario?
Go to your
tab
two.
Go back to the other sheet. Yeah. And Mr. Jewett, shared, well, potentially we maybe want to leave the vehicle license fee in place and reduce the rate, which 305 looks like would give us a little bit of, comfort room in case these are not in these numbers are, we're still working through a few things. So it would give you a little bit of room in case we miss somewhere in our projections. So again, it's really at the pleasure of the board. Do you want to, leave the vehicle license fee, reduce the rate a little further? Do you want to?
I think everybody is in favor of adjusting this. I think that's unanimous across the board. The proposed direction going 320 with no vehicle license fee seems to be a reasonable play. I understand, Mr. Dewitt's got a scenario you want to leave the license fee but adjust down to 305. You mind walking through that, Mr. Dewitt?
First of all, thank you, Mr. Daniels, for working with me on this and actually getting the board ahead of this problem. But over the weekend, I was looking at the spreadsheets and I conversed a couple of times with Mr. Daniels. And one of the things that struck me about this flat 320 rate, which, I would be okay with that. But one of the things that really stuck out to me is that if you have a vehicle that is an older vehicle, low value vehicle, and you eliminate the vehicle fee, the person operating that vehicle would be paying substantially less tax than they would be under the current system. And if you were, and this is my posit on that. I feel that if you're going to put a vehicle on the road, you should be, I think it's reasonable to expect a citizen to pay a minimum, because essentially what that's supporting is our public safety spending, which is about $6.2 million if you include sheriff, EMS, and the EMS center. So, for example, I've got one of my old pickup trucks, which is licensed. This is 2002 GMC Sierra. Under the proposed program that we have, I would be paying probably less, $12, $20 less than I am now. And it would be a small amount of money. And quite frankly, I think that I should be paying a floor on that, which would be based upon the vehicle license fee. Now, if you flip to the other end of the spectrum on this example, for example, the 2019 Expedition, and as Mr. Daniels and I discussed, if you own one of these vehicles, you're not necessarily a wealthy individual. Matter of fact, you're probably not. But a lot of middle-class families have these types of vehicles to transport their families around. And we're looking at, in this case, so going to the straight 320, we're still looking at a significant, $260+ increase in the actual tax amount. So I was looking at playing with some numbers, and if we went to 3.05, that there would still be an increase on that Expedition, but it would be less than what it is now. Basically, what I'm saying is that I know that the vehicle license fee is a regressive tax. I also know that, inflation, governments love inflation because it's a backdoor tax. And we're going to try to mitigate that with this adjustment. But I just felt like we should consider possibly keeping that floor under all vehicles in the county, since we do demand ever increasing county services. Again, this is just my proposal. It's my thoughts. If the board wants to discuss it, consider it, fine. If not, I'm okay with some other adjustment. But anyway, does that help you, Mr. Chairman?
All right. Other comments on either Jim's proposal or the proposal of the 320 without the license fee? Who else has comments?
Well, I guess I got a couple of comments, Mr. Chairman. I guess what struck me looking at this thing is where Brian put in the assessment tax bill, the effective tax rate with the vehicle license fee. And in that case, it looks like for the most part, the people that have the vehicles that are the lowest assessment are in effect paying more. The effective tax rate is higher. Right? So I think that the $30 vehicle license fee means more. I mean, I look at most of my vehicles, barring the one my wife made me buy, and I look at all the vehicles that all my family has up in Atlanta and all those, and they are old, and $30 would mean a whole lot to them as opposed to some others. So But I feel like, I think the way this works is if we ask the county attorney and the county administrator to advertise this thing tonight, the way I understand it, we could ask them to advertise at 320 and a possible repeal, and we can always or leave it there perhaps. And then we can go down after we have time to think about what you're saying.
If we advertise, we need to be advertising, and at the base, it seems like we're all at 320 right now. So we were to advertise at 320, but with the vehicle license fee. And then if we were to either go with Mr. Jewett's proposal, which different train of thought, that's great. I mean, absolutely great. We can either leave that on or take that off moving forward.
Because we can always go down.
Absolutely.
Right. You can
Exactly.
advertise. Is that correct?
That is right.
Yes, so you always, just like you do tax rates, or usually around the budget time, it's just different. You can advertise your max, always go lower. If you do reverse, you advertise lower and want to approve a higher number, you have to go through another public hearing. So you can always back off of that number if you want to advertise for 320 and decide later it's a less than that. You're perfectly within your realm when you go to consider it for a vote. So you are correct, Mr. Yao.
So you've got the new spreadsheets with Mr. Jewett's approach.
Right, and that's the one that's being viewed there with 305.
Yeah.
That's the tax rate and the vehicle license fee.
Can you run the same scenario as you've run on your proposal with Mr. Jewett's rates, obviously?
Right, that's what that is.
No, that doesn't have any of the totals on it.
Oh,
Yeah, go to
sorry,
the other one.
Right.
There you go. Go to that, please.
Yeah.
What about if we, thank you. What about if we go ahead? Is everybody in favor of going ahead and advertising for a public hearing at 320 with the vehicle license fee? And when would we have that public hearing?
We would look to have that on August 23rd.
There you go.
I will say that normally Mr. Daniel would need to have this information by September 1st. I believe he has or will be applying for an extension, so it may give you extra time. So my intent is not to give you that information to rush the board. I just want to talk about statute and process. So I think he'd probably be favorable on that extension, but that's where we're currently at in the process. So August 23rd would be your public hearing.
All right. Everybody good with going to public hearing, 320, leave the tax, and then we come back, we do the public hearing, we can discuss more if need be, and then we can go from there.
So this doesn't affect the license tax.
Not
Not
currently.
Right.
I think, yeah, not currently. We are advertising for a reduction, and then there's further reduction either based on the personal property rate or the vehicle license fee. But we leave them both in there, and then we can remove, because that would be the maximum that we would be able to go at.
May I ask for clarity? I want to pull Sean on this. Sean, the tax rate, I'm pretty certain on. They can advertise higher and go back lower. If they advertise with the fee, they could also repeal the fee because it's a removal. Okay.
Functionally, it's still a revenue, so it's less. We should be okay.
Okay. And
I will double check that and let you know tomorrow.
okay. Thank you, sir. One other thing, Mr. Chairman, on that, Mr. Daniel has pointed out, since you all recently exempted forestry equipment or harvesting equipment, it may be appropriate time, because normally we list everything out, and it has your personal property tax rate in there. There's also some language that goes on and on about exemption. So what we would do, it's the recommendation of the commissioner, which I agree with, and I've ran it by council. We would just add that language. So it would reflect what you've already taken action on with forestry equipment. So if the general public wasn't here, the board has taken action to exempt forestry harvesting equipment. That would be reflected in the advertisement, if you're okay with that.
Everybody okay with that? There you go.
Okay.
let's go ahead and advertise.
Yes, sir.
And we'll go from there. We'll be ready for public hearing on August 23rd. All right. Anything else on this item? Thank you everybody for meeting with Brian and going through it. Brian, thank you for the hard work. August 3rd, the Planning Commission doesn't have a case. Does anybody want to meet? They are going to do a workshop on the glamping. There seems to be an update on that. They're going to have that individual in, but they're just going to have a workshop. Do y'all want to have a meeting or not? Well, there you go. Let's cancel the meeting.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we cancel the August 3rd joint meeting with the Planning Commission.
Second.
And just for clarity, because we've had massive confusion about this in the past, we are just canceling our portion of the meeting.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. I think
We need to make sure this is very clear. Like, we're not going against the Planning Commission. You know, pass along to your friends. That's the way to be.
to that end, if Mr. Yowell could amend his motion to say that the Board of Supervisors meeting for that date is canceled rather than the joint meeting being canceled.
Do you amend?
So moved, yes.
What about the second?
I'm not sure.
Well,
Second.
Well, there we go. We got it. All right. So we're
Got that,
amending.
Al?
We're canceling our portion of the meeting. Planning Commission, you can do whatever they want. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Any other new business? Information and correspondence, Mr. Weekly.
I just wanted to make the board aware that I've reached out to a congressional aide. Actually, they represent a state senator and a United States congressman. It's been brought to my attention that Verizon has had a major outage in the Etland area of the county. Now, I'm happy to report that I believe most of the folks, at least the folks we have communicated with, have had their service restored, but 10 days without phone is unacceptable. I have contacts for higher ups at REC, VDOT, Dominion Energy, Comcast. I can get in touch with them, and they usually communicate when they have widespread outage, so we can communicate that to the board and your constituents. I was informed that Mr. Snyder is locating that number. There's a new person there. So before I go the SEC route, I like to finally establish a rapport, but it is unacceptable. If that's an area that doesn't really have reliable cell coverage, so it's a concern. So we're tracking that. I also want to kudos, he's not here tonight, but Mr. Gordon has been in communication with a lot of residents as well. So we're aware, and when I have more information, I'll be reporting that to the board.
Then we've got another public hearing that night as well,
On April 23rd,
August.
August the August
We're
the
past
23rd.
April. I know it's moving. I agree with you. But we're doing a public hearing to amend the RSA bylaws to change it for
yeah.
Orange and Madison.
Yes, sir. Thank
South
you.
Green.
Thank you. And good job to Sean to tracking all this. Gracie and I have been joking, like, which resolution is this now? We've done this 12 times. But this will be amending the articles of incorporation that are bylaws. So right now, RSA is a 3-member county, Green, Madison, Orange. This will be amending that to where it's just Orange and Madison, depending or based upon, because the VRA and SCC still have to approve this, but that's what your action will be on the 23rd. Mr. Gregg?
That is correct. One point on that, and I think it's important the public realizes, this vote is a reconfiguration of Rapid Hand Service Authority's board. The significance of it is RSA is going from a 6-person board to a 5-person board, and which is the minimum required under the statute pertaining to service authorities. The critical issue for Madison County, and at the time we were going through this, there was really very little we could do because of some negotiations with Orange County. Madison County will continue to have 2 votes. Orange County will now have 3 votes. The significance of that is a very basic math problem. Madison County, before, there was a certain equilibrium on the board. Madison County has lost whatever leverage it had. Unfortunately, the proposal that was left to us was the idea that Orange County was going to move to dissolve Rapid Hand Service Authority, or certainly that was insinuated, and this was the compromise, for lack of a better term, that we were able to come up with at that time.
Yep.
And again, the idea is to make sure the public is aware of
And
what we're doing here.
And Orange has been. They've been a partner on this for a while. Removing green, pending the decision by the VRA and the SEC. Will hopefully that goes through, because a lot of work's been going in the other way. Have 2 public hearings that night. Anything else?
I have one more item because you may start looking at this in your view shed. Spoke with Brian today, and they had a call with Motorola. We believe that tower will be constructed starting next week at the Hoover Ridge site. So, and then the prefab building should be shortly thereafter. So if you start seeing some vertical area, if you're out the park, you may not see too much above the trees, but that is occurring starting next week. We're still doing work, due diligence on the Hughes River site. So when we believe we have all final information for determination, we'll be bringing that to you. That's still in the works of what I will call final design that would be ultimately submitted to the Corps of Engineers. Ultimately, they have to bless anything that crosses stream areas, whether they're intermittent or not. So we're still in due diligence phase, and we'll continue to provide update as available.
There you go. The other one, just information. Hoover Ridge 20th anniversary this Sunday. I think it starts at noon. There's events all afternoon. Is it 2?
2 to 6.
Excuse me, 2. I apologize. Events all afternoon. Please, everybody come out. It's an asset for the county. Any other information and correspondence? All right. Yes, sir.
One final comment. Shaq Shackelford's memorial service was held this past Saturday outside,
Nice day.
Oh,
Nice day.
and the eulogies were each 20 minutes apiece. There were 3 of them.
What is this? Shaq's last vengeance? I mean, good God, that brutal day. Well, he represented us well for a long time.
Yep.
All right. Any other discussion? Back to public comment. Public comment.
So I appreciate, again, that Mike Sharman from Nova Marion, appreciate that you all are talking about decreasing tax. And I appreciate Mr. Daniel mentioning from Colonial Days we've had ad valorem, which is true. You notice in the tax foundation piece that I handed out, they mentioned that's probably one of the worst type of policies to have for tax policy. Mr. Daniel was stuck with it. You all have a variety of ways to change. And again, I would encourage you, don't look at this year, next year, look a couple decades down the road, or as Mr. Daniel pointed out, maybe a couple centuries. But what a more important issue on tax policy is, what do you need a tax for? And what are you spending it on? And a very short thought that I'd like to give you is, don't think of what this county can do with its tax money. Not what it can do, but what it must do. You can tax a lot and do quite a few things. You're gonna, every one of you, I'm sure, are having people come to you saying, well, why don't we do this? Why don't we do that? And giving you lots of great suggestions that you could do. You can tax and spend the money on that. But what must you do? What really are the minimum requirements for a county government to do? I mentioned before in a prior public comment to you, you should be the most powerful body of government that we have. You should be more powerful than state government, more powerful than federal, but we've had some problems in how our Constitution is being interpreted. But whether you are the state government, whether you are the federal, as the county, still impose upon us the least amount of indenture that we have to suffer through. I earn money, I pay a federal tax, I pay a state tax. I buy a car, and I pay tax on that when I buy it. When I need tires, I pay tax on those tires, not just sales tax, but other disposable taxes, etc. With both my cell phone and my home phone, And my heart goes out to the folks at Etna, because even though we're in Etna, we don't get cell service where I am either for Novum, unless I go up to the church parking lot and hang out there for a while. But I pay an enormous amount of taxes on each of them. We have layer upon layer upon layer upon layer of taxes. Then when we buy food, we pay tax on that. If we go out, we pay tax on that. All because so many people come to you as a body, or to a state government, or to a federal government, and say, well, I want this, and you, the government, can raise the money to pay for it. And I just encourage you, resist our blandishments, resist our requests. What must you do as a government to provide for our basic needs that we as a community need? Mr. Jewett had mentioned the correct term for what it would be with the license fee. It is a regressive tax, but I think it helps people progress. It's a fair tax. It applies to every human equally who has a vehicle. And they all drive over the same roads, have the same police force, et cetera. So again, those are basically the principles that I would like you to be thinking of as you consider how best to manage the very difficult responsibilities you have. Don't think of what you can do, think of what you must do. And then don't think of how much can this person afford and how much can that one afford, or how much is this worth and how much is that worth. But what can you do fairly to treat each one of us equally? Thank you.
Other public comment? Other public comment? Yeah, wait, are you saying peace, or there's two people watching us? Well, all right.
Uh-huh.
Good job, Cardi.
Yeah.
Oh.
I was a squeaky wheel calling Verizon every 2 minutes.
Hi, Nisha Jones from the Radiant area. I wish Mr. Graff was still here. I had questions about the Rappahannock Community Service Board. 7.8% of the population. It's not a great number. Having sit on that board, I know that there's a great concentration and focus on other counties rather than Madison County. They offer great benefits, especially for our senior citizens, especially during this heat. There has not been a big plan or push to push out the education or what they offer to our community members. Another point that I wish he would have spoke about is their resources that they have for the school system. They have a lot of resources for our children. And I've asked, how are you contacting our schools to let them know about that resource? And the last time I was on the board, there was not a plan, and they have a lot of resources for that.
Okay. All right. Other public comment? All right, what's the pleasure of the board?
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Thank y'all.